Be careful what you think, because your thoughts run your life. Those are the words of Solomon, who was the wisest man who ever lived, and he wrote down a collection of his wisdom, and we call it the book of Proverbs. It's Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. To be careful what you think about, because those thoughts run your life. And Solomon, like you and like me, he was prone to having some stinking thinking. Some thinking that takes us in a bad direction, some thinking that takes us in a negative direction. And the problem with that is that the way you think, or the things you choose to think about, truly do come out in your life. They can really impact your life in a big, big way if your thoughts are twisted and warped and negative and untruthful and based on lies or hearsay. If your thoughts aren't accurate, if your thoughts aren't based on truth, if your thoughts aren't wholesome, as Peter said, if your thoughts aren't about things that are good and excellent and praiseworthy, then your brain is going to be a little twisted, and it's going to take you to some places that are negative, dark, difficult, depressing, and all of it has to do with what you think about. Now, this month we're talking about new, and that God wants to make you new, and one of the things he wants to make new is your mind. He said that many times in scriptures, that he wants to transform us and change us into people that look more like him and talk more like him and act more like him. And he does that by changing the way we think. Now, this is a process in you that you're going to fight more strongly than almost any other process that God wants to do in your life. And it's probably not even a chosen fight. It's probably not something you want to fight. You want to look more like Jesus if you follow him, but your brain will fight it. And the reason is because you've created what scientists call neural pathways. And a neural pathway is just a strong connection in your brain between brain cells. And so the more you think a particular thought, the easier it is to think that thought. Therefore, that's the thought you will most commonly think. It's just like walking on a path. You walk through an area of grass enough times, and you're going to beat a path into that grass, and that becomes the spot that you walk on. Now, the problem is that that's a wrong thought. It's just too easy for you to think a wrong thought. And so God has to make that new. So one of the things you have to do is listen to the word of Solomon when he says to be careful. That means to stand guard. One of the things you can do as God renews your mind, one of the things you can do to get in on that process and be more open to that process and be more available to that process, is to be careful, to stand guard over what you think about. Be hyper vigilant and hyper aware of what you're thinking about. It's a good idea to do this sometimes. You obviously can't do this every day, but pick a day someday and just start to categorize the things you think about. When you have a thought, make a mental note, or maybe even in a notebook, write down, that was a thought that honors God, or that was a thought that does not honor God. And at the end of the day, see where you are. Just being aware of what your thoughts are focused on, being aware of how much of your time you spend thinking about things that honor God, and how much of your time you spend thinking about things that don't. Just becoming aware of that reality can really help you be careful in what you think about. What you think about will run your life. And so you have to be so very careful. So today my prayer for you is that you would start this day, or wherever you are in your day, just say, Lord, help me to think thoughts that make you happy. Help me to think thoughts that run my life into your word. Help me to think thoughts that make my life pleasing to you. See you later.